Thank you to everyone who joined. Like I said, I see some of you are commenting already. Just make sure you use panelists and all panelists and attendees. And if you want to ask a question, we will collect them all and ask them at the end of the webinar. And you can use the QA in the Zoom to send those messages. So I'm Diane, I'm from the X team. Welcome to our second InFocus webinar, this time continuing our deep dive on our content management system. What you're going to see today is a live walkthrough of how to manage dynamic content plus URL structuring, user-generated content, collection permissions, and filtering site content on your site using database collections. We'll be recording this session, as I mentioned earlier, and it'll be available for you to watch afterwards. Joshua has been working on a real site in this demo, and you can find it live at learndeck.org. This is the last in the series about content management on EditorX. So we, of course, have the first one on the webinar page for you to catch up on. And if you haven't already, please join our forum, Community X. We've got product managers, designers, experts like Joshua who are active there answering questions. There's lots of lively creation discussions, and you can share your creations there as well. So make sure you sign up. And that's at editorxcommunity.com. And you can reach your team directly by emailing hi@editorx.com. And that's about enough for me. I'd like to hand you over to Joshua, who's a Velo developer advocate. Joshua, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Diane. Thank you very much. And welcome everybody to part 2 of our webinar about the content manager and using it with EditorX. My name is Joshua Alphonse. If you might have caught me from the last time from part 1, and we're continuing today for part 2. I'm a full stack developer, also a music producer and avid record collector. And I'm also a developer advocate for Velo by Wix. So for those who are not familiar with Velo by Wix, Velo is a platform that works right on top of Wix that allows you to add JavaScript code. So if you're looking to add some more complexity to your websites and making them to web applications, definitely check out Velo at wix.com/Velo. So it's an entire suite for full stack development, and you can also add all the features that we're going to be talking about today. So if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on Twitter at Josh Alphonse. And if you'd like to, reach out to me on LinkedIn as well, it's just my name, Joshua Alphonse. And I would love to continue the conversations there.
Okay, great. And just before we get started with the presentation, I just want to remind everyone that if you have product questions, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll collect them and do the Q&A at the end. We know we're going to have a lot of questions to get through, so don't worry if we don't get to your questions. Don't answer what you want during the demo. And if you do want to chat, send a message in chat, make sure you write all panelists and attendees. And that's about it. Joshua, we're ready for you.
Thank you. So welcome everybody again. And just to let you know, from part 1, you can definitely check it out on YouTube as well. But today you don't have to necessarily know everything you knew from part 1. You could pick up right where we left off here, and you'll be able to, learn everything that we're learning. So some of these things may not be new from part 1, but you're going to see a lot of new things today. So this is actually our learndeck.org website that we were working on in part 1. And this is where we had a website that was created for different design courses. So of course, this is not a real website, but it's just showing you the power behind EditorX and the content manager. So let's take a look at some of the things that we did from the last webinar. We were able to take this EditorX site and populate this repeater that we have here while connecting it to the data that we have stored inside of our content collection. We also even started with some of the user-generated content that we're going to be speaking about today by creating this schedule a meeting section on the bottom. So we created our own custom forms, even submitted our information for when people wanted to schedule different meetings depending on the courses that they are speaking of. So today we're going to take it a step farther, and we're going to be using our repeater, and we're going to then click into our dynamic pages. So dynamic pages was actually the last subject that we touched on the last webinar that we had. And what dynamic pages allow you to do, dynamic pages allow you to create the same pages with the same design layout without having to then create more pages and has different content in it. So just to give you a preview of what we're going to be accomplishing today using these dynamic pages, we're going to show our different comments that we have. And then we're also going to be using our user-generated content functionalities to submit these different comments to our page for our courses. So take a look at what that looks like. So if I say my name is Joshua, and hey, editor X, and we can press send. And now that our content has been submitted to our collection, we'll be able to view these comments and see what people are saying about our courses that we have here on LearnDeck.org. So we're going to get to know a lot more about the Content Manager today and how to manage the user-generated content and use different functions like filtering of the content and even structuring your URLs. So that's what we're going to pick up right after those dynamic pages we went over from the first webinar. So I'll go over some of the core concepts of the Content Manager and the benefits behind it. So the benefits of the Content Manager is that it enhances your SEO. It helps save you time because it's so easy to get started. There's no more duplicating pages or constantly updating your content without affecting the design. So this is a great feature that allows you to have great collaboration between developers and even designers. So let's navigate to our editor now, and we're going to take a look at how to get started from where we left off from working with dynamic pages. So scroll over here. So as I mentioned right in the beginning, dynamic pages are pages whose content can change while keeping the same design layout. So what that means is when we have our, right here, the top bar, we have our Content Manager. So our Content Manager is where we're going to manage all of our content that we have on a page. So think of this as like our database for our entire web application and website. So dynamic pages can be found here really easily by just clicking on the collection that you have and adding a dynamic page. So right now we're in our dynamic pages for our courses that we do have. So the courses that we have here, if you remember from the last time, and which is on the front page for our repeater, we have our classes for UX and mobile, typography, tap targets, product design, you name it, all leveled down here. It's put inside of our collection. So there's lots of different fields that you can add to your collection, as we mentioned from our last webinar, and you'll see today some more of that functionality as well. So when you're adding a dynamic page, there's pages that are added. We have the title page, which is the page that we're on now, which shows the actual course that we're on. So it shows the title of it. So this is the title page for typography. And it also gives you an all page to show all the different courses that are there as well. So we'll go back to edit. So so far we've connected our UI elements here. When you create a dynamic page, we have different data sets that already populate some of these elements we have in the page, and these are called dynamic data sets. So they're just subject to change depending on the type of content that's there. So in this instance, it would be for the type of courses that we are going to be displaying. Each dynamic page gets its own SEO, its own route and URL. So this is going to bring us to our next part of how that's structured using URL structuring. So this is how we can help enhance our site in so many different ways that don't require us to be developers or coders. Since our content is stored in our collection and we have dynamic pages to display each course and the comments that are being shown, we want to make it easier for our site visitors and anyone who's interested in learning about LearnDeck by searching it on a search engine to help make sure that it's optimized and they can find this really easily. So we'll just go here to the top bar and we'll navigate to pages. And now we'll be able to see all of our different pages here. So now we're going to get into our URL structuring and see how that works. So right here by the ellipses, and then we click settings. We're going to start to see some of our page info that's here and permissions, SEO. So in order for every dynamic page to create that we create to have a unique URL, we must use a certain field to identify what it is. So first things first, we have this section here that says this page shows content from the collection from the following collection. So this dynamic page is going to be showing content from our course collection that had all of our courses and all the information behind it. The next part of our URL structuring that we have to make sure that we specify that actually already comes by default with our first field title is what is this page's URL? The field you add to the page's URL controls what's being seen on our page. So we already know that our URL is www.learndeck.org, but we want to make sure that we're specifying which course that we're going to be viewing depending on the URL we're typing. So we're going to have this URL structured as courses, which is from our course collection that you can find here in our content manager. And then the field that we have here is title. So title is the field that we use for the name of the course. So if we go back to our content manager and we check out our courses, we see that the name of each course that we have here is on the title field, right? So the title field comes by default when you create a content collection. You can always rename it, but just to know the ID of this field will stay the same and will stay as title, which you can find here in the field key. So that being said, let's go back to our pages and look at our URL structuring once again. So we specified now which field we wanted to uniquely identify this URL to be structured. So now we have our courses again. This is the collection and this is the field. So you can go here and edit whatever field that you want your URL to be structured by to find these different courses. I would obviously suggest in this instance to use the title field because that's the name of the course that we're going to be searching for if we had to find this on the web or if we were just typing in the URL. So there's some even more advanced functionalities when it comes to URL structuring, like adding filters and sorting the data set on the page. And if you'd like as well for SEO, this also helps for optimizing your search engines. We can then display the title of the course or the name of the course in our search engines. So we can go here and add our different fields if you'd like to add more fields that we have. Let's say we had something like a nickname for each course, or maybe the name of an instructor that is speaking on one of these courses or teaching one of those courses. We can have that there to help us optimize our search on the web. We can even use the image field to then embed an image to share on social. So if you're sharing it on Facebook, if you're sharing it on Twitter, or even sharing a message on Slack, it will give you that nice preview image that we have that we stored for each course that we have. And you can even see the preview, what this would look like if you were to search it on a search engine or something like Google. So it's important to note that if your URL contains no fields, the page will automatically display all of the items that you have inside of that collection. So if I didn't have this field here for title, it would just display all of my courses instead of giving me that individual course depending on the title. If multiple items have the same URL, they are grouped together and displayed according to the dataset filtering, sorting, and the number of items displayed. So it's just some key things to remember when you're structuring your URLs. But you see how easy it is to get started just to make sure people can find the correct course or any information that you're storing on your website. So now that we've gone over our URL structuring, let's take a look here at how we're going to collect our user-generated content. All right, so before we get started to work with these comments that are going to be appearing here, we're going to then first make sure that these comments can be submitted to our content collection. So on our last webinar, we focused a lot on presenting our content on the page. So now we're going to use some of the same steps to then reverse this process so that we can collect this content and then display it. So we're collecting the comments and then we're displaying it on our page for our users to see. So first things first, let's take some time and a step back before we start to add more things to this, to our forms. So for this instance, we're just going to leave our form the way it is, have the name and the comment. But before you start making your own forms after what you've learned today at this webinar, once you start getting into making these forms and building them, take a step back, just how we did from the last webinar when we went over data modeling. Take a step back and think about the type of information that you want to collect from your user. So for this case, we just want to collect the name and the comment of the user, but maybe you want to add another field for the email or the phone number. There's a lot of other real world context that you can put these custom forms to. So if you were a real estate agency and you wanted to collect an application about people that were interested in a property, or maybe even something for a school, you can then take a step back and think about the fields you want to add and then submit them to your collection. So let's head over to the content manager and just take a look at what this content collection looks like. So we have here on the top bar, content manager, and we have student comments. So student comments is where we're going to store all the comments we have from our students that are submitting, different information. So we have Tracy, this is her comment, Scott R, John D, and you notice that I even have some other fields here as well that are blank. And I'm just showing you here, these are different fields that you can add in case you had some more fields that you wanted your users to submit any of this information that you'd like to see. So if you wanted email, phone number, I can go here to this plus here, and maybe someone wanted to submit let's say a URL, or maybe even an image. There's plenty of different ways that I could work with this field with the content manager, and save. And then I can add more fields as I'd like, but we're just going to work with our title, which would be the name, and the comments today. So now that our collection is already set and ready to go, we're going to add another step to this, and we're going to use something that's familiar to those who have joined our last webinar, and we're going to use our data sets. So data sets act as a bridge between our content, our UI elements, and our content manager. All right, so you actually already see one of our data sets here. And a data set is an invisible UI element that you won't see on the published site that you go and set later on. But it's something there for you to see visually in the editor so that you can work with it really easily and add the different functionalities we're going to be showing you today. So to get started, to add a data set, we'll go here to the content manager and click add content elements. And because we're working with a form today, we're going to use the form data set. So this form data set allows you to collect data from your visitor. So there's two different types. You have data set, which is the one we'll use later on when we're displaying our content. And now we're going to use form data set to collect. So add here, settings. And now it's asking us to choose a collection. So the collection we're going to choose today is our student comments, right? Because we're collecting those there. Data set name. So by default, it automatically gives you data set name of student comments data set, because that's the name of our collection. But because we want to make sure we organize and we know what data sets we're working with, let's just add another name here. You can name this whatever you'd like, but for my peace of mind, I like to write the type depending on the mode of the data set we have. So we're going to name this student comments write data set. So you might be asking now, what do you mean by mode? Right below the data set name, we have a section here for mode. So right now, because it is a form data set, it comes by default a submit for write only. That's the mode. So write only allows you to submit content to a collection. There's other options as well. From our last webinar, we also saw how we created data sets for read only, and that helps you display content from a collection. So that's how we displayed all of our different courses on our front homepage. There's also a third option as well for you to read and write data. So for an instance that you would have to use read and write is if you wanted to modify your data. So let's say you had a form that you wanted someone to come back and edit something and resubmit, you can also use read and write as well. But because this is just the form we're submitting, we're going to leave this as write only. So we could just close out here.
And this kind of form, Joshua, sorry, and this kind of form could be really useful in like for submitting job applications or for filling in health declarations or things like that, right?
Absolutely.
We could use it for any type of use.
Any type of use, that's correct. And you can always go here to the add elements pane on the top bar here as well. And you can go and add different inputs and different input boxes. And you can follow the same steps that I'll show you in a moment, how to actually connect these different input boxes to your content collection using the data set. So again, the data set acts as the bridge between your UI elements and the content manager, so that same content can be submitted or displayed.
Cool.
So just to keep things simple, we'll just start with these two different fields that we have here. And if you'd like to add some more things that are complex, you can follow these same simple steps that I'll be showing you right now. So right here where it says name, this is actually an input for text, the same way I just showed you from the add element panel. And I'll go here to connect to data. So all you have to do is click the element that you want to focus on, and you'll see here this line here, these connectors says connect to data, and it'll bring up this box. So now we get to choose the data set that we want to work with. So again, remember the data set is our bridge. So we'll choose our student comments right data set. Now we can choose the value. So you may have noticed that we have some fields here that are idle. And these are all the values are actually the fields that are in the content collection. So this is all the fields we have available for the student comments collection that we have. So some of these are idle. And these are just things that come by default, fields that come by default with our collection. So we have our ID, which is an ID for each comment that comes that's already created and generated for you. We have the created date and updated date, just when these items are created inside of your collection. You may also notice here another field is idle as well, and it's image. And image is idle because it is a different field type or a data type. So because this is only collecting text, you won't be able to use this field. So even only if this was a UI element that was of the same field type, will it be highlighted. So because we're just collecting the name, we'll just use the title field, which comes by default, and that's where we're storing the name of each student. So we'll just click here, text. Now we have our text input box here as well for text box. And we're going to follow the same exact steps, connect to data, choose a data set. We'll choose the student comments right data set. And the value that connects to is the field for the comment. So it doesn't stop there. We also have to make sure that our button on the bottom where it says submit actually has the same type of functionality. So again, we'll just choose our button, connect to data, choose our data set, and we want to make sure we're using our student comments right data set again. And the buttons come with a few different options. So we have click action connects to, and we'll choose submit. So there's lots of different options that you do have with buttons, just depending on the data set that you're working with and how you want things to work on your website. So as you go and explore the data sets more, some more of these options will be available, like load more, next page, just depending on the type of data set that you're working with. So once we choose our action for submit, we actually do get some more options that are available to us that we didn't see before. And we have submit messages. So as you saw from when I was using the live site beforehand, it gave us a submit message telling us like, hey, your comment was submitted, just to give our user assurance that their comment was actually stored somewhere. So we'll add a success message here. And you see it just popped up on our screen, and we can drag and drop this wherever we'd like. You can even edit the text and let's say change the font and even the color. Right? There's lots of different options that are there. So this won't come available to you, once you click on the live site. It's only going to show up once we submit that comment. Great. So now we have our inputs all connected to data, and you can always make sure that something's connected to data by looking at this menu again, and you'll see that it's highlighted in blue, even for the button here, and even for this this message. And we'll go over to preview. Now let's check if our comment has been submitted. So say Joshua. Again, let's try hey editor X. Submit. and your content has been submitted. So as we go back to our edit site, let's check up on our content collection to see if our comment for Hey Editor X is there. So again, this doesn't require me to code anything, and you can make these forms however you'd like, depending on whatever use case that you do have. So if we go back into our student comments collection, we'll see here, I have at my top comment, Hey Editor X. And if I had more fields, I can go and add more content to these fields if I'd like, if I add them to our form. And that's how easy it is to get started with user-generated content. So as you saw, there's lots of different options you have with the data sets. But now we're going to show you some more options that you do have with the content collections as well. So this is where we're going to take a step.
Joshua, before you move on, I just have a question related to the
Absolutely.
last bit that we just went over. Can you elaborate a little bit more, please, on the read and write mode? How does the user find the entry that he wants to modify?
Great. Yeah, no problem. So read and write mode actually, read and write mode would be for different forms that you may have that you might have pre-filled, right? So let's say I had some different forms that I had pre-filled or wanted to modify something, or you could use read and write for editing, let's say user information. So if I already had, if I was a member on our website and I wanted to edit maybe my profile name or my username or something like that, you could use read and write mode to then go back inside those same fields and modify what it is, and it will modify that exact item inside of our collection. So if you wanted to make any changes or update an item, that's what you would use read and write for, because you're able to see it as the user and then you're able to write something. So you'll just have to go back here into the settings, mode, and then read and write. And you can use the same exact setup that we have here.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And so now we're going to talk about permissions. So we're going to take it a step further inside of our functionality for our collections. And all this means we're going to decide which type of visitors can interact with our content collection and how we call these and how we do this, and we call this permissions. So with our student comments, we'll just go here again, and we can start to edit how we want these comments to be submitted, or who we want to be, who we want to submit these comments, either if they're a member only, and maybe if they're just the admin to view them. Let's take a look at what this menu looks like. So this is where you will go into your content collection, your content manager, pick your collection, and you can edit the settings. So you'll see these same settings when you're actually creating a collection. And you'll see the section here for what's this collection for. Right now I have it under custom use, but let's take a look at some of these other use cases here as well. So we have site content, form submission, which is like for submitting the forms, of course. Member generated content. So if you were a member, are you a member and only members will be able to submit or even just see or modify the data in our collection using our members vertical. We have members only form submission as well. And we even have custom use. And this is where we can dive into our CRUD functionalities. So for those who may not be familiar with CRUD, CRUD means create, read, update, delete. So those are the basic functions that we do have available when you're working with the content inside your collections. So the ones that we've discussed so far today, we've discussed create, and we've already shown you how to create content and add it to your collection with those forms. Update with read and write mode. That's how you would update a collection. And then read as well. Read is for displaying the content that we did from our first webinar. And now delete as well, if you want to add that for an admin. So you see here, who can delete content from this collection, an admin, who can update content from this collection. We could set this to whatever you'd like, a site member, an admin, or just a site member author. So there's lots of different functionalities that you do have here. These are the basic ones that you'll be working with. So just get familiar with those functionalities.
Joshua, I have another question related to this. Does this only work for site members or all visitors?
You can set this for custom use however you'd like, actually. So who can read content? You could set this to anyone, or a site member, or a site member author, or even an admin. So This is for the custom use part, but if you don't want to add any other like type of custom use, you can just hit the back button and you'll see here just the general permissions for anyone can view anything from site content, form submission, and so forth. So there's lots of options that you can have here and even something you can set custom for yourself.
Okay, cool.
Cool. So now that we have our permissions all good to go, let's get to our next part and add some more functionality to our comments that we want to display on the page. So currently right now, we just have some default text here for our comments that we're leaving about our course. So even if I go to preview mode and I look at our typography course, we just have some general comments here that aren't stored in our collection. But let's take those comments that we're storing in our collection and display them in this repeater. So all we'll have to do is go to the content manager, add another content element. And this time around, we'll just add a data set, not a form data set. So now that's added to our page. Click settings. And we can choose our collection. So again, let's choose the student comments collection. And we are given a default name. And because we want to organize and just keep our peace of mind, let's just name this student comments read data set, because remember, we're going to be displaying these comments, right? So go back into settings again. The mode is set to read only. And we can also change the number of items displayed. So we only have 3 spaces here in this repeater. We can add more, but let's just show the top 3 comments that we'd like to see in periodical order. So the next step here as well, let's just go look at our preview. And now we'll be able to see, actually, I need to connect these to data first. So we have a repeater, and let's connect our repeater to data. So you can just go, because it's a repeater, you'll be able to click any of the elements in here, and they will populate once you connect them to data. So we'll choose our data set, student comments read data set, connect text to, and we'll choose the comment field. So remember, this is from our comment collection. So now that we click preview, we can see my last comment, hey, editor X. We have some other comments as well. I'm a UX designer. These are my courses. I completed the typography course. So these are some other items that are other comments that are left over. You can even take it a step further by going into these other fields, these other UI elements here, and choose a different field. So let's say I wanted to display the name of the person that left the comment. So we'll just use the title field. So the data set was already given to us. It's already in read mode. And we'll view that again. And we'll see all the names that are there. It's really easy, no code. But let's go and add some more functionality to this. Our repeater is already there for us and ready to go. And our data set's already connected and the bridge is working. But now we want to, add some more custom functionality to the type of comments we want to be displayed on our page. So because this is the typography course, how about we just show some comments from typography or people talking about typography? So to do so, we'll just go and choose our student comments read data set once more, and we'll click over to settings. We've already chosen the amount of items that we want to display. Let's go over to our filter section. So far we have no filter applied, but we can do so by just clicking add filter. And another menu will pop up. So this filter is going to filter depending on the field of your collection. So we don't want to filter off of the name of the person that's there. Maybe we don't, maybe we do, maybe we don't. But for this purpose, we just want to filter by the type of comments that are there. We don't really care too much about the person and who it is that's leaving the comment. So we'll choose the comment field. These are different conditions below. And the conditions that we do have is something, if we want something that's absolute, we could say is, like comment is this exact text, or we could look for comments in a more of a general standpoint, and we could just use contains. So contains will just look for a text that match the given manual value that we'll actually place here in a second. So we'll just choose contains. So we're looking for comments that contain a certain value. So we'll choose our value source, manual entry, and then we'll choose a certain word. So since this is a typography class, let's just use typography. So that's the word we're going to be looking for in all of our comments to display them inside of a repeater. So we'll add our filter. You even have abilities to sort as well, where you can sort by, maybe comments that are new and old, and there's lots of other options as well. But let's just take a look at our preview mode here. And our repeater should change. All right, so there's no more comments about Hey Editor X. As you see here, we start to have some more comments about typography. So even if I just go here and search up typography, you'll see all of my comments here have the word typography. And even if I didn't, let's say I wanted to filter by something else, and you wanted to see this, work in a different case. Let's say we go to edit, you can even delete it. And let's say I wanted to look for comments that had the word code. If I go back to preview mode, you see there's no comments displayed. Well, no one has left any comments with the word containing, with comments containing the word code. So there's lots of different options that you have here. Take a look at the conditions that we do have when it comes to filtering, and explore the Content Manager and Editor X together. Together, it's a really powerful tool that doesn't require you to be a developer, but you can get a lot of that development work done by just working with the data sets and using that bridge to display the content that you have from your collections, and then even collecting more content to store in your collections, or even show it like comments like we did today. So I just want to thank you guys for touring Editor X and the Content Manager with me today. That's it in terms of functionality. Definitely here to answer some more questions.
Great, thank you, Joshua, for that. It was really informative. As you said, we're going to move on to the question part, and we are joined by a few more members of our product team. We've got Alex and Gidris here with us. So, we will start with the questions. This is for you, Joshua, actually. Sorry. Seeing this slide about mobile first, will Editor X ever go mobile first, instead of having to design a desktop version and then mark up at lower resolutions? This might not be for you. This might be for one of our other members. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question, Joshua. What do we have to do if we want to hide the dataset icon?
Oh, if you wanted to hide it?
Yeah.
Well, it won't actually show up on the preview, on the published version of the site, or even in preview mode. So the dataset UI element is actually crucial for you to have visible there when you're editing your site and wanting to connect those different elements to the Content Manager. But when you if you wanted to see this on a live site, as you see here on my screen now, I'm actually on the live site of learndeck.org. And you can't see any of our data sets there. So it's only there for you to see from the editor side of things. So if I go here to our same typography class that we just were on, you'll see here that I have none of the data sets here. So they won't be visible to your site users at all.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And the next question is for Gidris. Is there a limit to how many items you can add to a repeater?
So there is no effective item limit. There is an overall storage limit of 10 gigabytes, but that's probably kicks in when you go into millions of items. And if you do reach that limit, we're going to tell you, talk to us, and we will be able to increase that limit. So effectively, there's no limit for you. And we have users storing hundreds of thousands of items, displaying those items in dynamic pages without problem.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next question is for Joshua or Gidris. Can you submit videos or only images? And will this functionality be brought into mobile as well?
Yeah, you can submit videos as well, just depending on the size of the files. I think that you just can answer to that question a bit more.
Yeah, you have a file upload button which allows to submit any file that our media platform would accept. So this is, you can submit zip archives, you can submit documents, images, certainly. I don't remember the limit of the file size out of the top of my head, but I will check it up and answer in the Q box.
Okay, thank you. Next question, can store pages be dynamic? Can you change a regular page you already created to a dynamic page?
Yeah.
So,
oh,
yeah,
sure.
go ahead.
Sure, go ahead. Okay, thanks. Certainly we call these app collections, and so Content Manager exposes data from various Wix applications that you have installed. So it could be stores, bookings, events, forum, blog, and many more applications actually expose their data to the Content Manager. So you can use DataZ and data binding to display the data and create custom pages for both your stores products, collections, booking services, and many other things at Wix. And we find that a lot of our users are actually building this custom experience. And regarding the second part of the question of whether can you convert existing page, yes. So there is, if you go to the page and go to the context menu, it will have an option to make it a dynamic page.
Okay, great. Next question, is there a way to hide the input boxes after a user has submitted his comment?
Yeah, there actually is ways to do that. And if you'd like to add some more functionality like that, and even something that is even a bit more complex, I would use Velo by Wix as well. So that's where you can actually add your JavaScript code to then add functionality. So if once that button is clicked for submitting, you can actually set functions to hide those different fields that are there. It's actually really simple to do so. And if you want to learn about that, I encourage you to check out wix.com/Velo, and even checking out the API reference as well. So you can either hide it or collapse those elements that you have there really easily with some simple lines of JavaScript code.
Okay, great. With displaying the students' comments, is it possible to have a step in between so that the admin can approve comments before they're visible, before they're live on the site?
Yeah, so in theory, you can make it in the way you could, for example, add a field that says approved, and then on data set, when you're displaying the comments, you would add a filter which says the field value approved has to be true. Which would then not immediately show the submission on the site. You would then be able to go to Content Manager, actually review the comment, set the approved field to true, and then it would appear on the site. There is a note of caution. It is very possible for the users to figure out and maybe circumvent that mechanism. So it can be solved with a line of Velo code to actually make it secure.
Okay.
Or so alternatively, okay. So I'll link to the documentation.
Continue. Okay. Will the user input content auto display on the site, or do they need to be synced manually to the sandbox from live to display?
So you'll have to make sure that if you're having this that's a good question. So if you want to put this on your live site, you just have to go into your collection and just make sure things are synced from there on. And then, you'll be able to work with Sandbox and live, depending on what mode you're working on.
Yeah. So just to add to what Joshua answered. So when you have a published site, so it will always work with the live data and the live collection. So your submissions go immediately to the live collection. And if you have already a data set that displays that content of submissions from the same collection, it will appear immediately. Unless, as you did in previous example, you want to have a moderation step.
Okay, great. Can you delete a data set that has been inserted on a page? You might have several ones and you mistakenly insert one and want to delete it.
Of course, just click a
Yeah.
backspace or delete on your keyboard while selecting the dataset.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't believe there's any limits on the amount of data sets that you can add to a page. And as you saw, we added two different data sets connected to the same collection that had two different purposes. So if you had to do something like that, it's very possible.
Okay. And we mentioned Sandbox in the previous question answer. Could you give us a little bit of an explanation about what is a sandbox, please?
Yeah, so Sandbox is a separate copy of your database, which has all of the same collections. So it's like, but there for you to play in the editor. So it's something that's only visible to you, the site author or your contributors, that you can use freely to explore and test your site, test your new changes without users actually seeing them. Sandbox is never ever available to the users or someone using the live site. It's there for you to allow to play with things, test out the new content that maybe you don't want to make it available, or test out new changes. But as your site grows, you may be changing the collections, adding or removing fields. And if you want to, before publishing, test and see how it works, this is the database to work with. We're also going to have an optional. So if you don't need Sandbox, you're going to soon be able to disable it. But for those that need it, it's a great tool to start your changes.
Okay. We have a request to show how you work with rich text fields.
So you can actually, I believe so. Let's see, inside of the content manager as well. There's actually we go here to our courses again, or maybe even to student comments. There's also another option here inside of our field types. So if you were to add a new field, you can actually add a rich text field. So you can rename it whatever you'd like. And now you can add rich text to the different fields that you do have inside of your collection as well. So editor X, and then you can go back and edit the rich text however you'd like.
Okay, thank you. How do you import data from a CSV file?
Yeah. So all you'll have to do to import data from the CSV, there's actually two options. You can copy and paste from a Excel file or Google Sheets file and just paste it right into a collection. Or you can also select your collection. And if you have that flat file already available, like downloaded on your computer somewhere, all you have to do is go into the content manager, choose your collection, click here for more actions, and import items. So this is where you can import a CSV file and you can choose your file from your computer. You can even export your collection as a CSV as well by clicking the same more actions button and then click export to CSV. So it's very versatile.
Okay, great. I think maybe one last question. Can you add reCAPTCHA before people submit?
Yes, you can add reCAPTCHA as well from our, let's see here. Even if you go here and add, and you should be able to search as well. Straight from the add panel, contact and forms. I think so, hold on. Just have to, it's inside of the add panel though. I just have to to find it. But once you go and explore all the different elements that are there, you'll be able to add CAPTCHA as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you so much, Joshua. As we said, that was a lot to take in. This webinar recording will be available on our webpage. There's part 1 there if you missed it, and we're going to send it in the chat now so you can take a look after we're done. And you probably have received an invite for our EditorX event in your inbox already. It's on February 4th. It's going to be a really special event, so be sure to join us there. We're also going to send that link as well, so you can RSVP now. And don't forget to check out the Academy for more learning resources. We've got videos, exercises, how-tos, and that's editorx.com/academy. And our forum that I mentioned earlier is editorxcommunity.com. You can also reach us, the team, at hi@editorx.com. And thank you again to Joshua and the rest of the team, and everyone else for joining, and we'll see you next time.